The V3 vessel was already listing when Mara Voss picked it up on long-range passive scan. A slow, terrible lean into the dark, like a bird with a broken wing trying to hold altitude and losing. She had been 11 hours into a solo transit run. Orders simple: deliver supplies to Outpost Herath, log any anomalies. The anomaly she just logged was 62,000 tons of failing Starship, broadcasting on a frequency the Interstellar Compact had officially listed as decommissioned 6 years ago. The V3 distress protocol was archaic, a cascading harmonic the newer relay buoys didn't bother to rebroadcast. The signal wouldn't reach a monitoring station for another 4 days. Mara opened the broad-spectrum channel and checked for any response traffic. Nothing. The entire compact sector around the drift corridor was quiet. No rescue frigate on intercept. No council tender vectoring in. Not even an automated acknowledgement ping from the relay network. The V3 ship had been calling into a void for, she checked the harmonic degradation pattern, at least 19 hours. She changed course without filing a request. There wasn't time. Her ship, the light frigate ENS Caro, had been designed for rapid logistics and light interdiction, not deep rescue. The med bay held 8 beds and an autodock rated for human biology. The docking collar could mate with most standard elliptical airlocks, but most was doing a lot of work in that sentence. She was one pilot, one crew of 4, and one ship moving toward a vessel built for a species she had 3 hours of cross-cultural briefing on and exactly 0 hours of hands-on experience with. She keyed the distress frequency and spoke anyway. V3 vessel, this is Lieutenant Commander Mara Voss of the Earth navigation ship Caro. I am on intercept bearing to your position. I am reading structural failure in your aft section and significant atmospheric variance in your forward compartments. Please respond on this channel. I am coming. 11 seconds of static. Then a voice, high, thin, threaded through with harmonics that the translation matrix took a moment to catch. Human, we did not expect. We have been broadcasting for the word does not carry a long time. A pause. Something crackled, not static, but the sound of something structural giving way in the background. We have 214 aboard. Most are elders, the congregation of the settled sky, pilgrims. They cannot, our propulsion coupling has failed. Life support in the aft thirds is already gone. We are losing pressure forward. Mara was running numbers while the voice spoke. 19 minutes to intercept at full burn. The forward compartment pressure curve she was reading off passive scan told her she had maybe 25 minutes before the forward section dropped below breathable threshold for a species with V3 respiratory physiology. She pulled that file now, skimming fast. Hollow bones. Delicate pulmonary chambers. 3-lobed breathing. They needed higher oxygen partial pressure than humans, not lower. The Caro could pump enriched mix through a mated collar, but only if she could get the collar locked in the next 20 minutes. I need your airlock access code and your docking collar specification, she said. Right now, please. The voice on the other end, she hadn't gotten a name yet, read out a 7-digit code and a collar type. Mara pulled the spec against the Caro's interface library. V3 Model 9 elliptical. She had a Model 9 adapter kit in the secondary equipment locker. It had been put there by a logistics officer she had never met, at a port she had passed through 14 months ago, as part of a broad compatibility refit she'd thought was bureaucratic padding at the time. She said a quiet word of thanks to that nameless logistics officer and told her engineer, Petty Officer Dren, to get the adapter mounted on the collar now, in transit. Commander, Dren said over the intercom from the collar bay, his voice flat with the particular calm of a man processing something he didn't have time to be alarmed by. This adapter hasn't been tested with a live pressurized system. I know, Mara said. Read me the tolerance spec while you mount it. He did. She listened. She calculated. The numbers were close enough that she didn't share them with Dren. 17 minutes out. She pushed the Caro to 112% on the main drive. a setting that was technically outside the certified operating envelope and would require a maintenance inspection before her next deployment. She logged the deviation because she logged everything, and because the part of her brain that was not actively managing the approach trajectory was running through every scenario in which this ended badly. 214 Vaethri. Elders, the voice had said. The congregation of the settled sky was a pilgrimage order. She found that much in the cultural brief. They traveled to coordinates of religious significance without military escorts, without redundant manifests filed with the compact relay network. They had been left behind by the political architecture of the galaxy, not out of malice, but out of the particular bureaucratic indifference that accumulates over decades of being small and quiet, and not strategically relevant to anyone. The voice came back on the channel. My name is Elder Sorveth. I am the ship keeper of this vessel. We have moved our people to the 2 forward compartments. The pressure it is dropping faster than we calculated. There are 214 of us. Many cannot move quickly. I must ask how long. 14 minutes, Mara said. Silence. Then carefully, the docking will be, are you able to pressurize through the collar? Our system cannot push enriched mix at this stage. The compressors are on the failed sections. Yes, Mara said. My engineer is mounting the adapter now. Another pause. When Sorveth spoke again, his voice had a quality she couldn't quite name, not relief exactly, more like the sound of a long breath finally exhaled. We have been broadcasting for 19 hours. We had calculated that no one would reach us in time. We had begun the prayers, the final ones. Mara's jaw tightened. She kept her voice level. Save those for when you're safely aboard. You misunderstand, Sorveth said, and there was something almost tender in the translation. We did not stop when we heard your voice. We simply changed what we were praying for. She didn't have an answer to that. She kept flying. Dren came on the intercom 8 minutes out. Adapter is mounted. I've run 3 dry cycles. Seals are holding. I want you to know, Commander, that my confidence in this is approximately 63%. That's better than I had 5 minutes ago, Mara said. Get the med team prepped. The autodock is rated for human. Override it to maximum oxygen saturation and turn off the species-specific drug protocols. We won't be administering anything. We're just giving them air and warmth. Understood, Commander. The bed count, 8 beds. Dren. Yes, ma'am. The corridor has a floor. So does the cargo hold. Get blankets. A brief pause. Aye, ma'am. On passive scan, she could see the Vaethri ship clearly now. A long, elegant vessel with swept hull extensions that looked almost like folded wings, though badly damaged at the rear. One of the swept extensions had sheared entirely. The hull plating along the aft third was buckled and dark, venting the last of its atmosphere in a slow, invisible exhale. The forward section glowed warmly on thermal, 214 bodies generating heat against a dying shell. She brought the Caro in at a shallow angle, bleeding velocity over 4 minutes rather than 2. A harder approach would set up vibration harmonics in the adapter collar that she didn't trust at this pressure differential. Her navigator called numbers in a steady monotone. Mara flew by feel in the final 200 meters, as she always did, because this was not the moment to change that. The collar made contact, the adapter seated. The magnetic lock engaged, 4 green lights on the board, and Mara had 1/2 second of something cold moving through her chest before Dren's voice came up. Seal is good. Pressure on our side holding. Commander, I'm reading a slight variance on the Vaethri lock. Their collar seal is degraded. How much variance? 0.4 atmospheres and rising slowly. If it gets to 0.8, we'll start losing mix into the gap. Time to 0.8 at current rate. A pause, 22 minutes. 214 people, 1 slightly degraded seal. She keyed the channel to Sorveth. We are docked. I need you to begin moving your people through the collar immediately. Move the least mobile first. Do not wait for assessment, just move. She heard over the channel a sound she had no precise cultural framework for, the Vaethri equivalent of a command given. It was a sharp harmonic phrase, 3 notes rising, and then she heard what 214 frightened elder pilgrims sounded like when they heard that sound. A susurrus of feathers, a collective inhalation, and then movement. Mara left the pilot's seat and went back to the collar. She opened the inner door herself. Elder Sorvith was not the first through. He was managing the line. Mara could hear him organizing from the other side, but he was clearly visible through the collar tube, 20 meters of reinforced fabric and a degrading seal between his people and the dark. The first Vaethri to come through was very old. She could see that immediately. The plumage was white and silver, the crest feathers flattened with something that was probably fear, and the hollow-boned frame was so light that, when Mara took the elder's arm to steady them, she felt almost nothing in her hand, as if she were helping a collection of fine reeds and wind across a threshold. She guided them aft toward Dren and the medic, and then went back and took the next one. The seal variance was climbing. Dren called it to her in regular intervals, 0.48, 0.51, while the line kept moving. Mara stopped counting the faces after the first 30. She just kept her hands moving, kept speaking in a low, steady voice. Watch your step. I have you go straight back. My crew will take you. You're all right. And tried not to think about the number that Dren was reading her. At 0.65, the collar fabric developed a visible shudder. Just a slight oscillation, barely perceptible, but Mara felt it through her palms when she braced against the tube wall. How many left? She called to Sorvith. 41, his voice came back. The least mobile, I have them. I'm coming to you, Mara said. She went through the collar into the Vaethri section. The air on the other side was thin and very cold, and it carried a smell she had no reference for, something between pine resin and static electricity, which she suspected was what Vaethri fear smelled like. The forward compartment was crowded with the last of the elders, pressed together in the warmth of one another, their crest feathers down and their luminous eyes very wide. Sorvith was at the center of them. He was not old by Vaethri standards. His plumage was still dark, a deep indigo black, but his eyes carried something that was not youth. He looked at her with an expression that the translation matrix couldn't help her with and that she didn't need it for. 41, she said. Let's go. The ones who cannot walk, point them to me. It took 11 minutes. She and Sorvith worked back through the line, moving the least mobile pilgrims physically, Mara bearing weight that she hadn't known she could bear until she was bearing it, Sorvith managing with the 3-armed carrying technique of his species and guiding with his voice all at once. When the seal variance hit 0.72, she felt the collar shudder hard enough that a pilgrim ahead of her stumbled, and she caught them without breaking stride. The last one through the collar was Elder Sorvith himself. Mara was right behind him. She sealed the inner door and hit the emergency decoupling sequence in the same motion, and the collar disengaged from the Vaethri ship at 0.79, 11/100ths of a point below critical, with a sound like a deep bell struck once. She stood in the corridor of the Caro, breathing hard, surrounded by 214 Vaethri elders who were breathing the Caro's oxygen-enriched air in long, shaking drafts. Dren was moving through them with blankets. The medic was checking the frailest with quiet efficiency. The cargo hold was already full. The corridor was full. Mara's 4-person crew had turned their ship into something it was not designed to be, and it had held. Sorvith stood in front of her. Up close, she could see that his crest feathers, the long display plumage that ran from his brow to the back of his skull, were slowly rising. She had read enough of the cultural brief to know that this was not aggression. This was the Vaethri equivalent of a held breath finally released, of someone standing up straight after a long time bent. He said something in his own language. The translation matrix caught most of it, rendered it quietly in her earpiece. You came through the silence. I heard the call, Mara said. Others heard it also. 19 hours, nothing. She didn't say anything to that. There was nothing to say that the facts didn't already speak for themselves. Sorvith looked at her for a long moment, then said something the Matrix struggled with, an old Vaethri phrase, liturgical. It rendered only a rough approximation. The one who answers is owed a debt that cannot be named without diminishing it. She filed her deviation log, her maintenance flag, her intercept report, and her medical manifest in that order. 214 survivors, 0 casualties. One collar adapter that had held 11/100ths of an atmosphere above what it was designed to handle, for 11 minutes longer than Dren's 63% had given it credit for. She requested a compact tender to meet her at Herath for survivor transfer, and in the remarks field wrote that the V3 distress harmonic needed to be added back to the relay network's active monitoring list, and that 19 hours was too long for any ship to call without an answer. The compact bureaucrat who processed the request 2 days later made note of the recommendation. 6 weeks after that, the harmonic was restored to the active monitoring list. Quietly, with no announcement, the way most things that matter are actually fixed. Elder Sorvith, for his part, never stopped. He sent a formal transmission to the V3 congregation's leadership, and a separate one to the Earth Diplomatic Registry, and a third one that Mara only heard about afterward, a public message delivered to the 3 largest interspecies relay nodes in that sector of the compact. It described, in precise detail, what had happened. The 19 hours of silence, the single human ship, the collar adapter, the corridor full of blankets. He did not describe it as a rescue. He described it as an answer. Mara was already at Herath by the time the message propagated across the relay network. She was in the maintenance bay, signing off on the collar system inspection, when her communications officer found her and read her the opening lines of Sorvith's transmission. She listened. She finished signing the log. "Good," she said, and went back to work.